Hello everyone, this is Eric Thomas, the Marketplace Minister. It's Friday, November 29th, the day after Thanksgiving. I hope that you have enjoyed your time with your family and your friends. Today, I'm with family and friends, and we're going to share with you in-depth revelation and perspectives concerning faith, family, and finance. Now, you want to go grab your pad, your pencil, your electronic device to take notes as you are going to receive some information, revelation, wisdom, strategies like never before. I'm with my brother-in-law, Shawn Moss, and we're going to be right back with you in a few moments right after this. And we're back. This is Eric Thomas, your Marketplace Minister, Senior Brand Specialist with the iGroup, and you can go online, find us there on our website, www.igroup5.com. And today we're discussing faith, family, and finance, and we're talking a little bit about how to position yourself and your family and in the place of dominance and success during your lifetime. So again, I'm here in Gainesville for the Thanksgiving holidays, enjoying family and friend. And I've asked to join me in this conversation today, my brother-in-law, Shawn Moss. Shawn, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you joining me. Shawn is an entrepreneur, and Shawn is also a husband and father, and very skilled and knowledgeable in what he does, very influential in the marketplace, and is going to join me in the conversation today because of his relevance, his ability to make things happen and transition. I call him a trendsetter and a game changer, and those are two of my tags I have on his life. Shawn, talk to me a little bit about what you do.
Sure. I started out as a corporate man and kind of got pushed into the realm of entrepreneurship, and so I decided that the place that I was working at was only going to push me so far, and I could only get so far with that company. I actually moved myself into the finance arena. I started out as a retail salesman, and walked into the finance arena by starting a mortgage company and starting a mortgage broker business.
Now, so you really can point in and give great input in this conversation. Let's start with talking about family, the family aspect. And Shawn and I'm speaking to the listeners now. Shawn and I have had some off-the-record conversations. Just, I guess you would call brother-to-brother conversations as we just been kind of passing along in visits and phone conversations. But Shawn, talk to us. My heart is like this when it comes to the family aspect of it. Not many of us, and when I mean us, I'm speaking, and although I do have a very diverse audience, but I'm speaking to the African American demographic. Not many of us come into wealth, health, prosperity with a road that's already been paved for us. So we have to work, and many of us feel like that. We have to work. We have to, and there's nothing wrong with work. Somebody said to us the other day, Mr. Craig Wilburn, that everybody can't be the job or the business owner. Somebody has to actually be the employee. But many of us have not had a path that was paved for us, or something that we inherited that was given us, that push, that great start in life. So, as we were talking in times past about having something, laid up something for our children, Scripture says that a wise man lays up something for his children's children. That's his great grandchildren. That's 3 generations up. So that takes a lot of insight into the future. What are your initiatives? What were some of your passions to move you into leaving corporate America to becoming this corporate man? And what were your thoughts as it pertains to getting married and starting to have and grow a family?
Well, I would like to say it like this, because I really like the fact that you just mentioned not walking into your destiny from a generation before.
Right.
I think about this. I was forced to go into the realm in which I'm in based on, number one, my belief in God. I put all faith and trust in the fact that God was giving me a direction to go in, and I just wanted to walk in it. But not only that, I believe that my natural dad gave me a destination push. And I say that because a lot of us don't look at the good, neither the bad in our life, and say, what was the purpose in all of this that happened in my life? Why did I go through what I went through? Or they can't look at their natural situation and find the good in it and push them to purpose through their natural situation.
I understand.
And I think, for me, it was me looking at my dad's situation saying, I don't want my generation to go forward like my dad's, that really pushed me into purpose. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
I felt like my dad was a prime example of what I didn't want my family to look like. So that pushed me to get into a mindset that I needed to seek God to find something deeper and more stronger than just what I saw my dad do. I allowed his failures to become my successes. I allowed everything that he did wrong to become my lessons. I didn't have to go to school because I watched him as my school.
Right.
I sat down and watched what I thought he did wrong and what I thought that wasn't right about the things that he was doing. And I said, I don't want to be that. And just that sheer will and that determination to not want to be that is what kind of pushed me into purpose, if you feel what I'm saying.
I really do.
A lot of times we'll sit down and we'll say, man, my daddy never showed me how to do this, or my dad never showed me how to do that, or, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I can attest to that. I can raise my hand and say, my dad didn't show me, my dad didn't, raise us with a silver spoon in our mouths. But I can say that I recognize that when I came into adulthood, that my dad did some things that I said I didn't want to do. And he did some things that I didn't want. He did a lot of things in his life, in his business life, that I said I didn't want to go down the same path. So for me, I took the negative I took the wrong that was in his life and turned it into the right that was in my life. And so I used that as fuel for my fire. I looked at my dad, and I'll talk just briefly about my natural dad, but my natural dad was a construction owner, and he built big businesses for, corporate businesses. And I mean, he stood on scaffolds, 20 feet in the air and did the siding for these big buildings. And I said to myself, my dad worked really, really hard, had a lot of men working for him, but years later, when it was time for him to kind of set back from that business, he really didn't have anything left for himself. He worked and he made money, but when he stopped working, no money was to be made. And I just said for myself, I don't want to see myself go down that path. So I didn't want to create a legacy for our family that as long as we're working, we'll be plentiful. But when we stop working, there's no more plenty.
Of course.
There has to be a shift with me as far as our generation is concerned. Our generation has to see something totally different than what I saw. And so all I'm doing is giving an example for my son to be able to see something different. When I talk about my dad owning these businesses and making money while he was working, but not making money while he stopped, I said to myself, what is that? What is behind that psychology? And that psychology is just not having a residual style mentality. And a residual style mentality just says, man, I have to allow my money to have hammer and nails in its hands so that it's working while I'm not working. And every day of my life I spent praying and asking God to show me, give me wisdom concerning how can I work smarter and not harder. Because I think my dad did a lot of hard work, and he was smart at his work ethics. He just worked really hard to obtain the things that he obtained, and it was by his hands that he was able to obtain them. But I think the wealthy mindset says, look, I've always got something turning, even when I'm not turning. As it says in in Matthew when it talked about the parable about the talents, and he talked to the servant and said, look, the one that buried his talents, he said, the least you could have done was put my money with the exchangers.
The traders, right?
You could have put it with the exchangers, and it could have drawn interest. So he said the least you could have done was put the money to work so that it could work. Put the money somewhere where it's got hammer and nails and it can work while you're not working it. And I think for the most part, that's a big scripture to me. That scripture says a whole lot, and it's the thrust behind what I do today.
Great stuff. Excellent. As you're talking and I'm listening, and you're provoking thought in my mind, and we'll talk a little more in this segment, and we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and we're going to talk about actual finances. But I thought about, Shawn, in relation to what you're talking about. One is that, and I'm sure you've read it as an entrepreneur, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's one of my homework assignments that I give all of my clients. And in the book, Robert talks about the comparison of his rich dad, which was his childhood friend's father, and his poor dad, which was his actual natural father, and him taking philosophies from his poor dad, which were incorrect, and comparing them with those of his rich father. I take that because my question initially, what you were answering, and you did very well in your response, you actually opened up and enlightened my eyes of understanding about taking what we did not receive, or some of the philosophies which I guess composed our financial or our money DNA, or our money psychologies, our money philosophies. But you've taken your father's strong, hard work ethic, you've taken that to heart to see what it did produce for him, but still had enough knowledge to see that moving forward is you would become a husband and a father, and be a breadwinner that you would not want to try to maintain, because there's been, I'm sure, since your father's entrepreneurial days and business ownership days, there have been several economic shifts. So, you've taken the principles, you've taken some practices, you've taken the good with the bad, and you've actually converted that which was bad into some good things, which are good, great. My concern, I'll move to the second part of what I was thinking as you were talking, with that is the scripture talks in Exodus chapter 1 that as the children of Israel were taken into slavery, one of the things that the writer says about that time was that the Pharaoh at that time did not know who Joseph was. And we're talking some several hundred years between Joseph, who we all know is the dreamer, who brings up economic strategy during the time of a famine, and spared people through 3 or 4 different economic strategies he's had. But as generations have gone on, now his people are enslaved, and the Pharaoh doesn't even know who he is. How do we preserve, here's where I'm going with the question, our work, our service, or what your father's done, what my father's done? I'm a 3rd generation preacher, as far as I can track back. My father is a pastor, his father was a pastor, my father's pastoring a church that his father pastored at one time. And I look to some kind of way carry my father's mantle during this lifetime, and surely after my father's gone on. But how do we make it to where what we have done and what they have done is not forgotten hundreds of years? Again, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. How do we preserve our work, our services, our trials, our errors, our mistakes to not just your son, but your son's sons, or your son's children's children?
As you ask that question, the thing that comes strong to my mind is my wife's family. Well, let's say it like this. My wife's granddad's father's father, okay, was living in Georgia, bought some land. The story that I got, from it was that he bought some land for about $300 and bought 300 plus acres in Georgia and titled and deeded that land to where it could only be dispersed amongst family members and never sold. Back then, his mentality said, I'm creating for my generations an inheritance that'll never leave them, that'll never leave this family, that'll go from generation to generation. And what amazes me is that we are now, me and my wife are, I believe, the sixth or seventh generation down, and there is a place for us to go live in Georgia if we want to go live in Georgia. There is land allotted for us, and we're the seventh generation down. So what I'm saying by that is to say, here's a man that had a thought that said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just believe that what I'm doing today will allow my family, my next family, to have something that they can call their own. And I'm just believing that from this point on, that family will be able to have something from it, and the next and the next and the next. Now, the biggest thing that I get from what he did, and I always use him as an example because I look at the success in his story and say, man, that's what I want to leave for my legacy from me on down. Because the success in his story is the fact that, man, from that one decision that he made, and he probably spent all the money he had ever saved up and ever had to buy this land that is now a fruitful place for his grandchildren and children's children. But the biggest thing that I look at is the fact that on all this acreage that they own, they actually get money from the county for the produce that land produces. I mean, that land it was a big decision for him to do that land, but that land is doing so much today that he probably never thought it would do just by making that decision that he made. So what I'm saying to you is that land today is making money without them having to work. Every family member that still lives there technically doesn't have to work because the land pays them. They reap the good of the land. You know what the scripture tells us about reaping the good of the land. They literally reap the good of the land. The land was their sowing soil, and now they're reaping from that soil. You know, they raise cattle on that land. They rent some of that land out. That land is paying for their livelihood. Wow. So I said all that to say my thought process is so similar to his thought process in saying, man, I'm gonna spend all my efforts, maybe all my money on something that can be long lasting and move from generation to generation, and it stay with the generations. I think as time goes on, though, us young individuals, we don't think about what's gonna happen with our next generation like that. We don't say, okay, I'll buy something today, I'll hold on to it. We say, I'll buy something today and I'll flip it so I can make some money for today, and then I'll take that money from what I just flipped and I'll try to buy something else so that I can flip it. We don't have a generational longevity mentality. We have a right now mentality. Our mentality says, get something today, make good of what you got today and keep going. Instead, I'm speaking to myself because I'm making transition with my own life to say I gotta find something that I can invest in that's gonna be not for me, not for Canaan, but for my son's son and my son's son's son. Yeah. I have to make those conscious decisions today. I gotta make a conscious decision to say, look, I'm gonna invest into something for the long term. But I think that we've been down for so long. When we get an opportunity to get up, we want to get up quick and stay up. So we have the mentality to flip. We don't have the mentality to buy and hold. I said all that to really just say my whole mindset is shifting into generational wealth. And it's not so much, when you speak of the word wealth, a lot of people think, having a lot of money in the bank. But I look at what my wife's great granddad did, and it had nothing to do with wealth back then, or what we would think wealth, which is laying a bunch of money up. But he made a wealthy decision, because in my eyes, wealth says it's not about the money you have, but it's about being able to live your life without a need. That's what wealth is all about to me. Being able to live your life without having the worryation of a need or an expense to a need. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So for me, I just believe that a wealthy place has nothing to do with the dollars that you have in the bank. So my whole mental state is changing into this wealthy place, this place of abundance to have enough to be able to live like no other, as Dave Ramsey would say.
Strong, very powerful. Now I said that was going to be the last point, and we're going to our break. Let's do this in about 3 minutes or less. You said something, and I'm taking notes as you're talking. You kept saying, and I put it in quotations on my notes here, having something. Shawn, what are the tangibles and the intangibles we should leave as an inheritance to our children? What would you say those things, most important things are?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind as an intangible thing is I need to leave my son with a wealth of wisdom. Mm-hmm. And I need to be able to sit down and teach my son the things that I know that are progressive. I need to be able to teach him progressive things. Mm-hmm. That would be the intangible. That would be the number one intangible thing that I can say is show my son the progressive mindset, because everything that I'm talking about really is all about a mindset. I mean, being wealthy is a mindset, being rich is a mindset, being poor is a mindset. I mean, it's where you decide to take yourself with your thoughts. Absolutely. And that's why you're where you are, because your mind won't let you go anywhere else. But so the intangibles is that I would say as tangible generational things. I feel like God has allowed us the ability to obtain the good of the earth. And when he talks in scriptures about our inheritance being this earth, I believe that everything that God has for us will come from this dirt. It'll come from this earth. It'll come from this ground. So if I'm going to leave my generations anything, it's going to be a piece of this dirt. It'll be a piece of this earth. And when I say a piece of this earth, my mentality says what comes from this earth, whether it be gold, whether it be natural stones, whether it be land, whether it be something that is derived from this physical earth that we're in. That is what I believe a tangible inheritance should be. Money doesn't come from this earth. Mm-hmm. So it will be useless to leave my son a whole bunch of money because he wouldn't know what to do with it.
Right.
He would squander it, and it would just go to waste. Your inheritance is the earth, so if you can obtain it, leave it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Powerful stuff. I'll share mine real quick, and then we're going to the break. The intangible thing, and this is all I ever come up with, is land and real estate. Mm. And you said that, but it's always been, especially the last year for me, last conviction, is as I begin to dig into learning more about real estate, I see that as the blessing of Abraham is real estate. God promised him land, territory, coast, actual physical land. But those intangible things I've listed are, one is a reverence for God. And I say that because we're his sons, all of us, we're his sons. And God is a dominant, ruling, sovereign power, king. We know that, and when we are his children. You said earlier, the earth is our inheritance, and I believe that. I don't think that that's preached and proclaimed enough. I think that we are so heavily conscious we are no earthly good because we feel like we're just pilgrims passing through here, which doesn't really make theological or biblical sense to me. He put us here. He created us in his image and likeness to dominate, to rule, to have a level of sovereignty here as well, that his kingdom would be mirrored here in earth as it is in heaven. So I don't think a lot of people actually make their people or their children, aware of God. And God said that throughout scripture, especially Old Testament, whenever children of Israel got off track, he would say it was because your fathers taught you something different. And whenever they were lineages and lines of success, God would always say, it's because your fathers taught you well. I think that we really need to get back to teaching our children a strong awareness, reverence for God, to really reverence Him, not just be aware of Him, but revere Him. His kingdom is a kingdom of honor and dignity. And I think we don't pass that on enough to our children. Honor and dignity and class. The second one is awareness of identity. And I alluded to that earlier, that we are His sons. We're the sons of God. Now are we the sons of God. Romans 8 says that the whole earth is groaning, waiting for us to manifest, to be revealed. And I don't think that we speak into enough of our children as far as giving them pure identity and awareness of who they are. Just a moment ago, I was walking with one of my daughters and just having dialogue with her about her really understanding why she's here, what she's created for. And we talked, I think, earlier today in some other dialogue, Shawn, you named, of course, both of your children very strategically. You gave them their names as a prophetic push into what they will become. Is that correct?
That is. I'm big on names. I just believe that names speak of your destiny. Names will determine what you will become. I mean, it's kind of like a name is prophetic. A name says this is what you will be, or will become. And I believe that so much because throughout the Bible we can look that names were so significant that the people throughout the Bible, their names meant what they were doing, or their names meant their destiny or where they were going. And so for me, even when I had a long conversation with my wife about what we would name our kids, our firstborn was a son, and I said to my wife, he has to have a powerful name that will represent the unction in which I would love to see my legacy be pushed through him. And not only that, but I just wanted to be able to see God operate in his life in the manner that I believe he's operating in my life. And I just felt like the name would just give him that push. But my son's name is Canaan, and it's not the actual land, but it's the individual in the Bible whose name had meant bearer of the land, or a person that possesses the land. And at that time when my son was born, everything in me was about real estate. At that time we were buying real estate, we were selling real estate, and what better way to push forth the destiny in my unborn child than to say, hey, prophetically, this is where you'll carry on this legacy. You'll be a possessor of the land. You'll take dominion over these areas and make, I like to say it like this, and don't get me wrong when I say it, but you'll make kingdoms, And I say it like that because I just believe that, in the book of Daniel, he said that there'll be a kingdom that'll rise, that'll crush all other kingdoms. And
right.
I just believe that what that means is that when the sons of God, I'm glad you said that, but when the sons rise up, because the earth is waiting on the sons. So when the sons rise up, he allows them to create kingdoms. And what kingdoms just mean is that he's a king over that domain. There's a domain, and he's a king. He's kingship, or he's a king over that domain. And I just believe that. That name that's given to a person allows them to establish kingdoms. I was taught in church before that there's a kingdom of everything. There's a kingdom of sports, there's a kingdom of this, there's a kingdom of that. And so we have to take that mentality that at some point what God allows us to own or represent, we become kings over that domain. And so we establish a kingdom. And I always say it like this too, that I believe that we're in the game of life with God. And that game that God has orchestrated is the game of Monopoly. And that Monopoly game is him saying, look, I want my people to rule every single corner of this board, so that when the unrighteous need a pass, they got to go through you first. But I believe that that's what God is creating. He's waiting on his people to rise up and take dominion, so that we can filtrate this earth. And so, to get back to what you were saying with names, I just believe that the names are destiny driven. And for me, naming my son that was just me saying, hey, I'm prophetically speaking into his life, saying that you'll become, what your name speaks of. And I know, Eric, you can say a whole lot of scriptures on names and name changes in the Bible and them becoming those names. So, I don't want to elaborate that much on that, but it's an awesome subject. It's an awesome topic, and I think people need to start putting their minds in that realm, because I always say that your mentality will keep you from getting to a place. If you can't fix your mentality today on what's good, right, and righteous, you can't get anywhere. So it's all about shifting your mentality, and just doing something as simple as that is a mentality shift.
It is. Absolutely, it is. You're sharing your heart, man, and very profoundly you're doing so. And I hope and I pray that all the listeners are soaking it up, taking it in, and ready to apply it. Number 3, we're going to break. My number 3 thing that I think we should, when we say have something and leave as one of those intangibles, again, I'll go back to my list real quick. My tangible was land or real estate. Number 1 for intangibles is a reverence for God. Number 2 is an awareness of identity. Number 3 is a passion for others. And I think that we live in this time, we live in a place where we are very, 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 and I mean as a people, we're very self-centered. A lot of I statements, and as I peruse through Facebook, and most of my nearly 5,000 friends on my personal page are believers, confessed believers, and I never read so many I statements, self-centered statements. And if you want to make a difference, use John 3:16, most favorite text and most known text in the world. For God so loved the world that He gave. If you want to be known for anything, it's going to be known. You're going to be known not just for what you know and how good you are at what you do, but how you have served not just your community, but served the world. And I think we can leave that with our children, a sense of purpose, a sense of regard for mankind. We're going to make some leaps and bounds in being game changers, world changers, and trendsetters. Well, again, this is Eric Thomas, the Marketplace Minister. I'm here today on my visit here in hometown, Gainesville, Florida, with my brother-in-law, Shawn Moss. We're going to take a quick break. I want you to go and, if you haven't already, grab your iPad or pen and paper. I want you to take some notes. And we're going to dig deeper into some strategic perspectives concerning finance. We'll be right back.